In the heart of Mexico, nestled deep in the Sierra Madre Mountains, there lay a small, forgotten village called San Manuel. Hidden from the modern world, its people lived simple lives, untouched by the outside. One of the village's oldest traditions was the local blacksmith trade, a role held by the Garcia family for generations. The most recent in that line was Mateo, a strong man with thick, calloused hands, known far and wide for his skill in forging metal. Mateo's work was impeccable, blades sharp enough to split a hair, horseshoes that could withstand the heaviest burden, and ironwork as intricate as lace. But despite his mastery over metal, Mateo harbored a deep dissatisfaction in his heart. Every day he watched as his customers, rich landowners and aristocrats, rode off on finely bred horses, living in luxury, while he toiled away in a dingy forge, covered in soot and sweat. He worked harder than any of them, yet fortune never smiled upon him. His pay was meager, and he lived in a crumbling stone house near the village's edge. No matter how many hours he spent at the anvil, no matter how flawless his work, Mateo felt the heavy hand of poverty gripping his soul. And as the years passed, he grew more bitter, his heart hardened by frustration and envy. It was during one particularly cold and lonely night after a long day of work that Mateo sat outside his forge, staring at the full moon. The silence of the village was unsettling, the only sounds being the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. His thoughts were dark, consumed by jealousy. "If only I had wealth," Mateo muttered to himself. "If only I had power, I would show them all. I'd be the richest man in all of Mexico, no longer forced to slave over iron and fire for a few coins." As he sat there, lost in his thoughts, a voice broke through the night. "Wealth is not always found in gold and silver, Mateo," the voice whispered. Mateo jumped to his feet, his heart racing, scanning the dark street around him. From the shadows, an old man appeared, his hunched figure emerging into the dim light of the moon. He wore tattered robes, and his face was hidden beneath a hood. His presence was unsettling, as if the very air around him grew colder. "Who are you?" Mateo asked, backing away instinctively. The old man smiled, though the smile never reached his cold, pale eyes. "I am someone who knows the desires of a man's heart, and I know that your heart yearns for riches, for power, for the respect you believe you deserve." Mateo's brow furrowed, but the stranger's words were alluring. "I've worked my whole life for nothing. If I had what they had, the wealth they flaunt—" The old man raised a gnarled finger. "There is a way to get what you want. There is a place deep in the forest where the wishing fountain lies. It is said that whoever drinks from its waters may make a single wish, and that wish will be granted. But beware, blacksmith. Every wish comes at a price." Mateo's eyes widened. He had heard the old tales passed down from his ancestors, stories of the wishing fountain, hidden in the wilderness, able to grant unimaginable wealth. But these were just legends told to children, weren't they? Still, the temptation gnawed at him. His life had been one of endless toil and disappointment. Could this be his chance to change it all? "I will find this fountain," Mateo said, his voice filled with determination. "I will make my wish, and I will be free of this wretched life." The old man nodded, but there was no kindness in his gesture. "Go then, but remember, blacksmith, the fountain gives, and it takes." Before Mateo could respond, the old man turned and vanished into the darkness, leaving only the echo of his warning behind. The next morning, Mateo could think of nothing but the wishing fountain. He packed his belongings, a flask of water, some bread, and his hammer, and set off into the forest that bordered the village. The path was old and overgrown, and soon it disappeared altogether, leaving Mateo to navigate the dense, twisted trees that seemed to close in on him as he ventured deeper into the wilderness. Days passed, and as he journeyed farther, the forest became darker, the canopy above blotting out the sun, leaving him in an eerie twilight. The trees themselves seemed alive, their twisted branches reaching toward him like claws. Strange noises echoed through the woods, unseen creatures moving just beyond his vision, and the constant rustling of leaves that sounded more like whispers. Each night, as Matteo lay beneath the stars, the warnings of the old man replayed in his mind. The fountain gives, and it takes. But he shook the thoughts away. What could be worse than the life he was already living? What price could possibly outweigh the wealth he craved? Finally, after what felt like an eternity of walking, Matteo stumbled upon a clearing. The ground here was softer, the air heavier, and in the center of the clearing stood the fountain. It was ancient, built from cracked stones, and its waters shimmered in the dim light, unnaturally clear. There was something hypnotic about it, something that drew Matteo closer, despite the growing sense of dread that gnawed at his gut. He knelt by the fountain, staring into its depths. The water seemed to glow, a soft light that promised everything he had ever wanted. The weight of his decision pressed down on him, but greed silenced any hesitation. "This is it," he whispered to himself. "This is what I've been waiting for." Matteo cupped his hands, scooping the water from the fountain and drinking deeply. The liquid was cold, colder than anything he had ever tasted, sending chills down his spine. He swallowed, his heart pounding as he prepared to make his wish. "I wish for wealth," Matteo said aloud, his voice trembling. "Wealth beyond imagination. I want gold, jewels, and power so that I never have to work another day in my life." For a moment there was silence. The forest around him seemed to hold its breath. Then the ground beneath Matteo began to tremble. The trees shook and the earth cracked open. From the depths of the earth, piles of gold coins, glittering jewels, and ornate chests filled with treasure erupted. Matteo gasped, staring in disbelief at the fortune that now surrounded him. It was more wealth than he had ever imagined, enough to make him the richest man in all of Mexico. He fell to his knees, running his hands through the gold, laughing in disbelief. But his joy was short-lived. A low, ominous growl echoed through the clearing, and the waters of the fountain began to churn violently. Out of the fountain rose a figure, tall, shadowy, and grotesque. Its form was barely human, twisted and deformed, with eyes that burned like embers. It was the old man, but now he had become something far worse. "You have made your wish," the creature growled, its voice no longer human but a deep, guttural rasp. "And now you must pay the price." Matteo's blood turned to ice. "What price? I wished for wealth, nothing more." The creature grinned, revealing rows of sharp, rotting teeth. "The fountain gives, and it takes. You wished for wealth, but in return, it will take your heart. Not your life, Blacksmith, but your soul. You will have your riches, but you will never feel joy, love, or warmth again. Your heart will turn to iron, and you will live in eternal isolation. You will be surrounded by treasure, but it will mean nothing." Matteo stumbled back, terror gripping him. "No, I didn't know. Please, take it back." The creature's laughter echoed through the forest, a sound that chilled Matteo to his very bones. There is no undoing the wish. The deal is sealed. With that, the creature vanished into the fountain, and the waters stilled. Matteo stood there, surrounded by his newfound wealth, but his heart was heavy with dread. He tried to leave, but every step away from the fountain felt like chains tightening around him. He was bound to this place now, bound to the curse he had brought upon himself. Matteo returned to San Manuel, laden with gold and jewels. The villagers were in awe of his sudden fortune, and soon his name spread far and wide. Aristocrats and nobles came from miles around to buy his treasures, and Matteo became richer than he had ever dreamed. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Matteo began to feel the weight of the curse. His heart no longer raced with excitement when he counted his gold. The joy of success was hollow. The warmth of the sun felt cold against his skin. The laughter of the villagers became distant echoes. His heart was turning to iron, just as the creature had promised. Matteo's once vibrant life became a lonely, hollow existence. He withdrew from the village, locking himself inside his grand mansion, surrounded by wealth but consumed by an emptiness that gnawed at his soul. He could no longer feel happiness, sadness, or love. He was numb, trapped in his own body, a living shell with an iron heart. The villagers noticed his absence, but none dared to approach the blacksmith's grand home. There were whispers of strange noises coming from inside, clangs of iron, eerie groans, and cold winds that seemed to seep from the very walls. Some said that Matteo had gone mad, consumed by his greed. Others believed that he had been cursed by the devil himself. Years passed, and Matteo was forgotten, his mansion falling into disrepair, overtaken by vines and shadows. The once prosperous blacksmith was now a ghost, a cautionary tale told to children around the village. One day, many years after Matteo had made his ill-fated wish, a group of travelers stumbled upon San Manuel. They heard the stories of the blacksmith and his cursed fortune and were drawn to the legend of the wishing fountain. Greed, after all, has a way of enticing even the most cautious souls. They set off into the forest, determined to find the fountain and claim their own fortune. But as they journeyed deeper into the woods, the trees grew darker, the air colder. The path twisted and turned, leading them in circles. And though they never found the fountain, they swore they heard the distant sound of metal, an anvil striking, echoing through the trees. They turned back, abandoning their search, their hearts heavy with fear. And so, the legend of Matteo, the blacksmith who wished for wealth, became a warning to all who sought the wishing fountain. The fountain still lies deep in the forest, waiting for the next foolish soul who dares to make a wish, unaware that the price is always far greater than the reward. For the fountain gives, and it takes.